Then you went on a big old long rant before we went live. No, that's okay. Okay. Hi, everybody.
That's all right.
I guess I'll just, be here with my hair all crazy, I guess.
Well, you just be down with the kids.
Yeah, exactly. The kids are all right. AI. I tried to pull it off in the show. These show notes are wild, man. Like there's
lots of interesting comment.
I have not seen show notes with this much snark and attitude in a very long time, myself included. Have you seen some of my answers to the?
Yeah, I wrote mine, then went because I try not to read yours before I write mine. So I don't influence, but then I'll read yours to see if I then delete anything out of mine to see if you've done anything, and then I'd like there's a couple of them that just like go no, you need to we're very much on the same level.
this person needs to calm down. So not just us, Barry. There are other people in our show notes, and by other people, I mean our wonderful patrons. Or this could be someone from the lab. To be fair, our lab gets access to these show notes, and I think I'm suspecting it might be someone in the lab. I don't know who this is actually.
I've got an idea, but only because of I don't know, style of writing. But I do think that when you do the intro, you have to use that name. You absolutely have to. It's easy. That is going to be easy to say than some of the Reddit names.
I'll say it in the pre-show. Hi, everybody. I'm your host, Nick Bobik, Fanana Fanafofik, Fi Momik, Nick Roome.
Now you've got to say that. you have to. Because then that'll give good encouragement for further development of interesting names. I think it should be a thing.
All right.
If you could pull out,
you know what?
If you can pull out without stumbling, then that'll be impressive.
we'll go off how I'm feeling when we actually go live.
Which is code for he's going to bottle it.
We'll see. I'm just going to wing it because I did add like the second paragraph there. The snark is in full effect in these show notes. That's for sure.
If I just did that, no, you have to say it.
Oh, you've accepted the. Now it's not even called out as a cautionary. Geez. All right.
That was
there's that, and then there's some language in these show notes that are hilarious. Patreon exclusive right there. If you want to see what those are, just a buck gets you in the door.
But it is true though.
That's hilarious.
But we've also had an awful lot of social interaction.
Yes, we did.
Which is like lots of it. Pages of the stuff.
Yeah, speaking of social interaction, if you are watching or listening to this live right now, you can comment on whatever platform you're listening. If we like the comment, we'll say it on the show. If it's vulgar, offensive, or propositioning us for things that we frankly don't care about, we probably won't mention it on the show. But if it's a completely related topic to our story tonight, which is burying the lead, is what that's called. Robots teaching our kids in the future. And this is a really cool story. We'll talk more about it when we actually start the show. But essentially, what do you all think about robots in the classroom? Leave your comments wherever you're watching, listening. If we like them, bring them into the stories, the show. You can always on any of our social platforms, HFC Social Thoughts. That's the hashtag. I'm building in some automation to bring those into
I see
the show notes. So use the hashtag.
I see. If I'd known that, I would have done.
No, it's okay. I told you last week that I was playing around with the idea, but I didn't do it yet, and I still haven't done it. But hopefully by next week.
It's because we chose the story earlier this time, so it went out on Monday.
Yeah.
I'd like to think that we got more social thoughts because of that. And it turns out we didn't because we got them all tonight.
Yeah.
So,
well, hey, if you want here, you know what we could do? Because this is a Thursday night show. If you're watching live right now, you have the opportunity to influence what we talk about on next week's show. We usually talk about this in the post show, but since we're on the topic, there is a poll out right now for our it's on our Patreon, but anyone can go out and vote on it. And the stories next week could potentially be the takeaways from Stanford's 386-page report on the state of AI. I put that one in there for Barry because I wanted to force him to read 386 pages.
Can we not do that?
But
please?
It's an article on the takeaways from that report, Barry.
Yeah, but you know what I'm like? I will have to go and... Actually, it might be useful for something else I'm trying to do. So, okay. Might read
and then we have another robot story, if y'all are interested in that. Once More with Feeling, exploring relatable robotics at Disney. And then technology for people living with quadriplegia. So there are some really interesting topics for next week. I will post a link to that. I'll tell you, I'll go ahead and post a link to that. If you want, I think you might need a Patreon account to vote on it, but you don't have to pay us anything to vote on it. It's open to anyone. And I will post that in the chat right now so you all have access to that and can influence next week's show. Let me just go ahead and post that there. And that should be
cool
on a couple of those platforms, I think. Yeah, I think that works. So go do that. Let us know. Right now, it's currently tied. 1 vote for each of the 3. So we need some tie-breaking votes. But then, of course, you can do social thoughts for next week and let us know what you think about any one of those stories. I have my personal preference. I'm sure Barry has his own personal preference.
I'm not sure, to be honest. As much as I was dissing the 386-page report, that could be interesting. But whether it's interesting, it's interesting for us to read and take and digest. Do we want to talk for an hour on it? Possibly not. Given that I bet I could probably guess really what it's going to say. Who doesn't like a bit? You know, though again, how different is that from when you got your AI girlfriend? I could be up for I think the technology for people living with quadriplegia, because that takes us into all sorts of bits around control, and it takes us into exoskeletons and
accessibility. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of avenues for that one for sure.
So if I was going to
potentially... Oh, this is awesome. We got some live votes. Sorry. We got some live votes on that right now. We just got 1 more vote each for the 386-page report and 1 more for the robotics. So no love for the quadriplegia story.
Well, I think people should try harder.
After we just said, oh yeah, that'd be interesting to talk about.
Yeah, let's not vote that one. But well, that's just the way people are, isn't it?
Oh man.
Fine.
Oh, okay, never mind. Someone did vote for the quadriplegia story. All right. Now it's all tied again.
So we no further vote. Come on, people. Give us something interesting.
We need some more tie-breaking votes.
Oh, but how's your week been? Have you had a nice week? Just chilling out, just doing not very much?
Yes.
Good. Well done. I'm pleased for you.
No, I've had a crazy week, a crazy work week. Packed in probably a week's worth of work in 2 days for various reasons. It's been crazy, hectic, but I made it through. It's podcast night. This is, Barry, you've mentioned it before. You feel like this is your therapy session in some ways.
Yeah.
And for me, I very much feel similarly in the sense that this is my social, like there's talk about spaces. There's like your workspace and your home space and your third space, right? Your community space. This is my community space.
Fair enough. That's cool.
Which just happens to be in my home, in the place that I work from home.
Yeah, I was going to say, so there's the multifunctional space that you use different lenses to.
But it puts me in a totally different mood than any of the other two, because I get to interact with you. I get to talk about something that's fun and just like, this is, we do this because it relates to our profession. And of course, we have fun talking about other things as it relates to human factors. But it's always just a good time to hang out, chill. That's what the pre-show and the post-show are for. It is like that third space for me. And hopefully it can be like that third space for all of you, too.
See, what I'm hoping for. So tomorrow I'm hosting a team workshop. We're going off-site to do it, and everyone's coming along, and we're talking about the value and issues surrounding a 4-day working week. Because we're going to, I think we said before, we're probably going to trial a 4-day working week for the rest of the year, starting probably in June, something like that. So we've done some of our own research. So tomorrow we're going to do this off-site thing. If we end up going to a 4-day working week, it's likely to be Monday through to Thursday. So this was what we're doing now will technically be the start of my weekend, which would be awesome, because that means that like tomorrow I'd be clearly chilling, not doing anything, because that's what I normally do. I won't be picking up other sort of gadgety things at all to play with. So it's going to be quite interesting. So this could be, so I could actually be sitting here with a glass of wine, maybe a beer, because I have work tomorrow.
And you could also stay up late and help me out with post-production. This is great, Barry.
Darn it. Yeah, I might be busy. Might really early start tomorrow. Surely you've automated that by now.
I wish I could. There's a lot of things that I have automated post-production. And I've gotten it. It's interesting. I've gotten it down to a good workflow where I can get it done in about, and before last week, 30 minutes. I could do all the post in 30 minutes. That's all the video editing. That's all of the audio editing. That's the full audio version for our patrons. That's everything, right? I've incorporated a new tool into that workflow. Last week, it took me an hour and a half to do everything post.
Right.
But again, it was my first time. Like, I tried to do some stuff before to see how it all work out. I just didn't have all the pieces of the puzzle I needed because it wasn't an operational environment. And so with last week's episode, I put in some new pieces of that technology into the workflow, and it's definitely, I learned some lessons. I'm still figuring it out, and I feel like it's still going to take me like an hour tonight, but I've and it's really interesting. So one, a new tool for audio editing that transcribes and cuts out all of our ums and ers, because no one wants to listen to that.
Well, that means I'm not going to be saying anything.
It takes out like 6 minutes of the episode, Barry.
I'm going to say.
But think about this. When you're listening in your car and it's just so streamlined and focused and all the thoughts feel well thought out.
Oh, see, we're lying now then.
No, we're not. No, it's the same as going in and just polishing up like a short, where you take out all those ums and ers and make it just the most focused piece of content you can. We're just doing that over a 60-minute span of the episode. And with that, so that's one piece. The other piece, which is really cool, is I actually reached out to this platform that we're on right now, Restream, and said, hey, you know what would be a really cool feature is if they allow us to export the audio by itself, right? So I could export your track and clean it up if you're on the wrong mic or something. Or, you know, if we have a guest that doesn't have a good mic, we can clean up their audio, put it out there. And that's great. What they've done is now they've allowed you to download the raw video. So I can download the raw video for me and for you, and then I can put it together in that program that I just mentioned, Descript, and I can make it switch between us depending on who's talking. And that was not something that I was accounting for in that previous workflow.
Yeah, exactly.
So cool. It's so cool. It just makes it more interactive and more engaging.
I'm assuming, because I haven't looked since you said that, and I don't know why I haven't, because I think you did that while I was away, didn't you? So I haven't actually looked, and I haven't recorded an episode since. So I need to. I'm assuming they haven't done that for past recordings because they wouldn't have been able to.
No.
But I'm quite looking forward to doing my next recording, which I think is next week. So, yeah, that's going to be quite cool. And I'm going to get to play with it. So So we'll see, because that is probably, certainly when you come to make shorts as well, it's one of the difficult things, because of the way that things mess up.
The video is captured because the way that you record, you record like this. Like we used to do this.
Yeah.
We used to do this.
I'm still old school, so I might try going to this, but I quite like the framed discussion. I would quite like them to be bigger, or at least to be able to play with them. But there's only so much you can ask of an online platform, isn't there?
Yeah.
If I wanted to do it properly, I would use, I'd do a professional setup, but I'm clearly not going to do that. But,
yeah, this is nice, and it works for situations where you have maybe multiple folks. Like I used to record like this, so that way I would have the full video. I could crop it down, and we'd have the full horizontal video for each of us.
Yeah.
But then I went to this because I was like, okay, if I'm cropping it down anyway, I'm just gonna do it the 16:9.
Yeah, I might try this approach for a future one and see how it works. Because now, like you said, if you've got the individual feeds, then that allows you to play
exactly
so many different things.
Exactly, and so I just do a batch download, and it allows me to play with that content later. So it's really nice. It's really nice. So, and I had asked for that literally the day before we had recorded, and then the person that I talked to was very nice, and she said, "Yes, I'm pretty sure they're working on that." And I was like, "Oh, thank you. Just knowing that it's coming is great." And then when I went to finish last week's episode, it was there sitting for me, and I'm like, "They give me early access to this, or what's going on?"
That's very cool.
Yeah. So I'm very excited about that.
Sorry, I was getting notifications through LinkedIn. I wonder whether people were giving us social posts, but they're not. So,
what I haven't checked, which I need to incorporate into my workflow, is the voicemails. If you want to leave us a voicemail, you can certainly do that. Patrons get to the front of the line, but you can just go to our voicemail on our website. You go to our website. There's a little microphone in the bottom right-hand corner. Just leave us a voicemail.
I had a voicemail the other day.
Oh, did you?
I was very excited. In fact, I had two, but it was the same person doing the thing. But and I haven't quite worked out how to incorporate them because of my shows and not that sort of weekly pace of what we have here. I was wondering about how best to incorporate that so it doesn't age and that type of thing. And I had a bit of a thought the other day about maybe doing some sort of really short weekly update or something like that for this year, because I don't know whether I mentioned it before, but on Monday I become president of the CIHF. It's going to be very exciting. And I was debating.
Big deal.
I was debating about doing the president's pod, and just a weekly or maybe a fortnightly blast update about things that are going on, things that have been happening, and just chucking it out there either on 1202 or maybe as a slight aside, a bit a la Human Factors Minute type thing. You should
do the president's pod.
So
just make it a separate thing.
Yeah. So I might have a go at that. We shall see how it goes. I'll probably need to get I need to talk to the new CEO and make sure that they're all down with that. But hey, I'm in charge now. Oh, I'm going to be. What are they going to do? Fire him? Oh, they could actually fire me. Yeah, that's fair. So let's try not to get fired. I've got 12 months to try not to get fired. That'd be quite cool.
Oh man, I'm excited for you. That's awesome.
It's one of these things. I think that as things are getting closer now, it's a really useful thing of doing the whole president thing. So I've had a year of sort of getting into it, and people know the sort of things I'm going to be I want to doing. People know that the sort of things I want to focus on, which is fab. And all the stuff have been really helpful around it and stuff like that. But then there's obviously going to be the AGM on Monday, which is just a remote thing. I don't really have a thing in it. But then the week after is conference, and so having seen now the agenda that has Barry Kirby president on there is a bit of a Oh, that's cool. But also, because we all know, I've talked before about imposter syndrome and stuff. Boy, is that high at the moment. It's like,
I'd imagine.
It's like, dude, look at that. Well, what am I going to do? What happens if somebody asks me a question? What happens so how do you do all this really hard human fact? But you're the president. You should know all this sort of stuff. But I don't know how to do it. Oh, dear.
Mr. President.
Next thing you know, I'll be being indicted for random bribery things. I'll try and avoid because that wouldn't be cool.
Wonderful. I have just set up an email filter for voicemails that I can run. I need to figure out how to make this a filter though, because I have filter messages like this. Yes.
It's one of the reasons I don't actually like Google Mail or Gmail anymore. Oh, I never have because it applies just labels rather than actually has bins. For stuff, it's just I prefer moving things into bins. But there we go.
That's fair. That's fair.
But it's free. Well, it's not free because I'm paying for it because it's my other stuff. But yeah, exciting time. So you're gonna on those of you watching on YouTube are gonna see me sort of stretching my back out quite a lot during this because I've trapped a nerve. And quite frankly, it's one of it's one of the most painful things I've had since last week. But yeah, I'm having to take some really quite strong painkillers to do that. So Amanda dosed me up about half an hour ago, so they're just starting to kick in now. So hopefully life will be better. But yeah, so if you see me doing random stretches out and stuff, then I'm not bored or anything like that. I might be bored, but also I'm trying to stretch my back out. Anyway, I guess we've got him. Are you okay with everything in the notes?
I think so. I'm
more
kind of over a lot of it, but I mean, yes.
I'm more prepared this week than I have been because I started earlier. It's better than last week when I just turned up 30 seconds to 30 seconds to live.
Yeah, I saw you in the show notes about an hour early today, and I was like, oh, yeah. Okay.
So yeah, I thought I'd put a bit of effort in because that's clearly been lacking recently. Oh,
on my part, yeah, you're
right. Yeah, exactly. It's all you, Nick. You don't put any effort in whatsoever. You don't do anything for this.
Whoa, where am I going? Okay. Whew.
So if anybody does have any hints or anything about how to ease the pain of a trapped nerve in your neck, then I'd be very grateful to hear it.
Oh yeah, you put your thumb underneath your chin like this, and then you put your other hand on this. Wait, no, this side of your head, and then you just and then you're good.
I saw that on John Wick as well. The head came right off. So,
and that's it. Oh man,
I'm quite excited to see John Wick 4 because I'm quite a fan of the John Wick movies. I think they're very good, depending on your level of blood, violence, and gore, and just out and out really quite cool fight scenes.
There we go. I have not seen any of the John Wicks.
Oh, I thoroughly recommend them. They're very good.
A lot of people really like them.
Yeah, it's obviously
they're gratuitous, right?
Oh, hugely. But they're done in such a way that they are. You don't normally have a fight scene where the two people start knocking 7 bales of rubbish out of each other, and then they get up, dust themselves down, and go do it again to the next guy, and it's they maybe get shot 2 or 3 times, and it's like a feather blow or something, and they just keep on going and going. Whereas actually in these, you actually have fight scenes, and they actually get hurt, and you can see like the main character like get battered, but it actually affects them before they. I mean, clearly they still win the day and stuff, or has so far, but. Yeah, you can actually see the as they take hits and stuff how that it's a thing. So,
I saw the other day on social media. I don't remember where I saw it, but is a video of one of the stunt people from John Wick as they were like the behind the scenes of them falling down an escalator.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And I was just like, damn, like how the way that they fall in such a like graceful manner that makes it look like it really hurts, and it probably does, but they're like the way that they contort their body in such a way to do it with minimizing injury, I should say, is just so impressive. Like this was a full-on escalator working, and this person just boom all the way down. It was,
I mean,
awesome.
It's one of these things, isn't it? Because we are now so used to seeing things like, you know, people being shot and stuff like that. And that whole movie thing is just we don't appreciate almost the simple stuff. And like something like that is a stunt actor basically putting not necessarily their lives on the line, though actually that people have died doing this stuff. But you know, if you do that wrong, you got to get hurt. It's got to tickle. I mean, one of the things that makes John Wick quite cool, he goes and shoots somebody in the head, right? So he shoots somebody, but there's some really one. You know when you like see, you used to shoot somebody and red would blossom over the chest or bleeding, right? Or maybe a bit of they get a small hole and it would do that. This, when he shoots them, you actually see the bullet going in and the splatter coming out the back of the head. And you're like going, from a technical perspective, going, how do you do that? It looks so realistic. That is brilliant. How do you make all of that come together in a? I assume he hasn't just gone down and gratuitously shot all the stunt people and all the extras, and there's actually massive death toll somewhere. But no, it's impressive. It's really good. So that's a 2-minute commercial for John Wick there, and all available in your local rental store, Netflix, and Amazon Prime.
Oh God! I just came back to the show notes and saw the comment. That's great because I love comment.
Oh, I thought that was the one you were talking about. Which one were you talking about then?
No. That is the comment. That
right, yeah. No,
I just came back and saw the comment.
Yes, I keep on going past it, and it just makes me giggle.
Well done. Well, whoever did that tonight, good. Well done. You've made us chuckle. It makes this week just that much better, I think. Okay, we got 2 minutes left. Not enough time for any calls, but we can certainly do calls in the post show, or voicemails if you want to leave us a voicemail during the show.
I was trying.
Feel free to do that.
Given the nature of what today's topic was, I did try and get Amanda on to be a third presenter, because obviously she does most of the education stuff at home, and she had very strong thoughts on it. Fortunately, she has been ill for the past 2 weeks, and so she was like, "Well, I can't really talk," and I was like, "Well, that's the best way I like you." Apparently, that wasn't the way to encourage her, but no. So I think it wasn't a no because she doesn't want to do it. So I think maybe in the future, if we talk on an educational perspective or tech perspective, she might be quite keen to come on.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'd love to have Amanda on. I don't know if I would be the one that would feel outnumbered, or if you would be the one that would feel outnumbered on that show.
I just switch off and deal with it, I guess. See, because I was actually thinking about how do we technically make it work, because she could be sitting just over there and we could actually go through the same sound bit, so all the sound would basically come through my feed, but but have the second camera feed up, or have her, so we could set up a second camera, or or just set up her laptop. So,
well, you can do 2 cameras now, right? You can do 2 cameras off of your rig. So yeah, she could be in the same space as you and just have that second camera going.
Yeah.
And then we have this thing split in thirds.
Yeah, because we have a second.
Yeah.
Anyway, so there are ways to do that. And then I've already spoken to you just as a quick tease about a potential future guest. In a few weeks.
Yes.
So that could be quite cool. So we'll see how that works.
Yeah, and I will say, if any of you human factors professionals out there have something to say about topics that you may or may not know of in advance. I guess now that's another good thing that we're doing. We have 4 days in advance now that we know. So we know the story before it's even going live.
And that's it. And if we know that somebody, or if somebody reaches out and says, actually, I would love to talk on that because I've got these views, then we'd be like, yeah, come on, bring it on. In fact,
shoot, we could almost start reaching, like we could have reached out to these researchers this week and see if they wanted to. Dang.
Oh, we could have. Next time.
Next time. Hey, this is all new for us. We're all figuring it out. And speaking of figuring it out, I'm going to play this and you figure out what's happening next.
Welcome to Human Factors Cast, your weekly podcast for human factors, psychology, and design.
What I'm about to say will amaze you. We have done 280 shows of this show thing that we do on this show. We've done 280 of these. We're recording this episode live on April 13th, 2023. I had to double check that because I made some updates to the automation. This is Human Factors Cast. I'm your host. I'm going to say it, Barry. Nick, Bobic, Banana, Fana, Fofic, Fee-Fi, Momic, Nick Roome. I'm joined today by Barry Kirby.
Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you for the person who put that in the notes. And great to be here. That's just made my night.
We've got a great show for you tonight. The snark is in full effect in these show notes, that's for sure.
Really?
So, yes, that's if you are detecting an attitude at the top, that is certainly what's going on here. We'll be discussing how preschoolers prefer to learn from a competent robot rather than incompetent humans, such as the ones that are hosting this podcast right now. After that, we'll be answering some more questions from the community, such as what do you do when stakeholders ignore your research and feedback? Do you have any ideas on what to do when you've lost your data in the sense of a recording? And lastly, we'll talk about antagonistic customer experience UX relationships. I love it. But first, got some programming notes for you all. If you are unaware, we have some conference coverage coming out for you literally as we speak. There's some interviews out now with the student design finalists. All of this is from the Healthcare Symposium in Human Factors that was just earlier last month, I guess. Some other friends of the pod talking about cool topics like medical challenges and human factors. We also catch up with Joe Keebler and Tara Cohen about the latest from the conference and with Farzan and Tony about the journal. So lots of cool stuff to look forward to. They're all in your feed right now. Go listen to them if you're interested in all that stuff. And there's one more to come. We're just waiting on some final approvals before we actually release it. So look for that soon. Barry, what is going on over at 1202?
Well,
I must know.
1202, we talked about naturalistic decision making, or NDM. And this is with a friend and ex-colleague of mine, Rob Hutton. And he's done an awful lot of work. He's lived out in the States. He's worked out in the States and came back to the UK. And I worked with him in my previous job. And he gives us a real insight into naturalistic decision making, how it came about, and how it's used. And actually, it was quite eye opening for me. It's not something I've had a great amount of experience before, and it's one of them that I then went away, downloaded a few papers, and started reading them. So, thoroughly recommended. And I wonder if there's any of these that I've not recommended. So I'm pretty sure I say thoroughly recommended for all of them, but then I'm obviously biased. So yeah, thoroughly recommended. Go and have a listen.
Yeah, it's better than this episode sucks. Well, I'm going to make the naturalistic decision to go and move us into the next part of the show. That's right. This is the part of the show all about human factors news. Barry, what is the story this week?
So this week we talked about how preschoolers prefer to learn from a competent robot than an incompetent human. In a recent study, preschoolers aged 3 and 5 were tested to determine whether they prefer learning from a competent robot over an incompetent human. During the study, the children watched a video of a young woman and a robot called Neo, that sat side by side, pointing to familiar objects between them. The robot labeled the objects accurately, whilst the woman labeled them incorrectly. The children were then presented with unfamiliar objects that were labelled with nonsense words by both the robot and the woman, and were asked which name referred to which object. The 5-year-olds were twice as likely to choose the robot's correct labelling of the woman's, whilst the 3-year-olds didn't really show a preference. The study also found that the morphology of the robot didn't affect the children's trust strategies. However, the study also found that the 3-year-olds struggled to distinguish between biological organs and mechanical gears, while the 5-year-olds were more likely to assume that the only mechanical parts belonged to robots. The study is important to help us understand how technology could effectively facilitate learning as we continue to live in an increasingly technology-rich environment. So, Nick, what are your thoughts on your younger Nick spending his years being taught by a walking, talking ChatGPT app?
Well, by the amount of hallucination that ChatGPT has, not great. But I mean, you know, I put in here the kids are AI. Anyway, bad joke. I think in a lot of ways, adults would rather learn from competent AI robots than from incompetent humans, or deal with competent robots over incompetent humans. I think we have a naturalistic preference towards competency. My first thought on this immediately goes to bias and algorithms. And if we're teaching, then how do we sort of accommodate for these things in terms of, you know, racial bias, gender bias built into these algorithms from the get-go? I will say, assuming those issues are solved, there are some other higher order things that I am a little, I guess, questioning, concerned about. Curious about. There's the whole social interaction piece. What happens when we take away that human element of teaching? Is it going to be effective in the long term? You know, you might be able to learn things, but is it going to stick? Is it going to be effective for not just this cohort, but future cohorts, etc.? There's also this interesting question where the teacher is seen in most cases as an authority figure. They are the adult in the room, literally. And so what happens when the adult in the room is the robot in the room, and they don't have the same level of awareness? Here in the States, we have unique problems facing our school children, such as bullets hitting them when they're sitting in the classrooms. And if a robot is teaching, are they going to have that level of awareness to get the kids to safety? It's terrible to even think down that route. But there are situations, let's just take it back a notch and say, like natural disasters, earthquakes, tornadoes, wherever you're at geographically located, there's probably something that fires, you know, you name it. What's going to happen in a classroom setting where a robot may not have those environmental cues and I guess sway with the children to lead them out of that environment safely? Then the last thing, I guess, is, you know, in the classroom setting, does this then change the dynamic of what the students are learning? Is this just limited to a classroom, or can this be, you know, applied to homeschooling too? Can you put them in a room and will they learn with an AI in that room? I don't know. Presumably, if it's competent, but how do you then match that learning to the students? We talked about this in a different episode, but there's a whole interesting conversation about what AI can do to enhance learning. And I just go back to that conversation because there's the sort of tailored approach that you can take for students. And if you incorporate that AI, I promise my thoughts are almost done. If you incorporate that in AI and bring it into a teacher who has awareness of a larger classroom, that could actually be really effective for addressing most of the class's educational needs. And so for that reason, I'm excited about it. Barry, what do you think?
Big deep breath. So if education was just about the delivery of information and the uptake of information by the young, eager mind sat in the classroom, then probably, in fact, it could be a lot more accurate because it would have all the facts available. if everything was there, you'd know it would happen. You know that every class will be delivered in exactly the same way because it'd be programmed to do so. Brilliant. But what is it that a teacher does over the facts and over the lesson plans and things like that? They can inspire, they can motivate, they can give you an enthusiasm or a passion for a subject. That I mean, I don't see how a robot could do that. So, how does a robot motivate you? How does it get you excited about a topic that maybe you have you have an art teacher who's passionate about the art, you have a maths teacher who's passionate about doing that, and that passion can ignite something in you. But then I flipped that and said, well, actually, were all of my teachers that passionate about their subject that I was ignited? Well, clearly not, because my foreign languages are a bit rubbish. And, certain things didn't hit my aptitude. So actually, is it just a few teachers that ignite you with a passion? And therefore, actually, does it matter too much? I do think at that level, I think for younger students, possibly that's not where this is most beneficial. You sort of hit upon it. I think for older students, secondary school, sixth form, university, where you could use that robot in a way that could be hugely beneficial, not perhaps at the front of the classroom, but what about as the assistant? What about as a cobot? One of these robots per small cohort of children, a small cohort of students, or one-to-one. So a true cobot, human-machine teaming idea. But this leads me, and I'm just going to get my soapbox out and metaphorically stand on it, because I think this highlights a bigger issue. And I will declare we home educate our children, because I think that the school system is somewhat broken. Because I think if we get robots in at that age to do what is being professed, then it will further destroy individuality and creativity within children. At the moment, we have a classroom based, and we've driven this classroom based younger and younger and younger, like down to nursery and things like that. It's really a Victorian approach to education. It's made to teach by rote. It's made just to keep children busy while parents go and work, but also just chuck loads of information at them. And then that drive around, the need to read has got younger and younger and younger, which is actually unhelpful in children's development. We're trying to get them to sit down in a classroom for however many hours a day, which is not helpful. And if we then replace the teachers who do that with robots, then we're not, where are the kids going to go outside? Where are they going to go get their hands dirty and their feet wet to learn about what it is to be in society, to learn how to interact with other kids, to learn how to live? So I think that if we're pushing this type of technology at this age, and so that's where I'm hypercritical of the article itself, if we're pushing it at that age, then we're just going to reinforce an antiquated approach. And there's a really cool TED talk about this, which I can talk about post show. But fundamentally, I think I think robots have a place, cobots have a place in older education elements, but please keep it away from preschoolers or from young schoolers. Would be my thing. Right, I'm just going to go and put my soapbox away. Did we get any social thoughts and anything worthwhile to bring up?
Yeah, we got a couple, actually, and I'm going to bring up some here live. Alex is watching along with us. They ask, how will they interact with the creative thought of children as well? Then consider what analytics the robot is reporting back. So when we dive into consent for that feedback being recorded. So there's an interesting question on consent. Barry, I know some folks commented on your Twitter and Facebook. Do you want to go over some of those?
So David Godwin commented and said, well, anything will be better than homeschooling. I think that was a bit of a dig at me, because I've known David for a long time, and he knows we homeschool. And then my friend Duncan Flint on Facebook also with the idea, yes, we could use hunter-killer teams for truants. I don't think that's quite what they're looking for, but it's cool.
Yeah, I want to, before we get into some of these more interesting questions, I want to just recap the study and talk about it from a methodological standpoint. I think it's important to cover that. Basically, what they're looking at, you said this in the blurb, but there's a humanoid robot now, and is that how it's pronounced? Now?
It's Neo.
And a Neo, and a truck-shaped robot named Cosmo. So there's two different types of robots. Now, I understand Barry, that you may have met one of these robots?
I've met Neo. We've had a conversation. In fact, Neo's danced for me, which was quite good. So, one of the partnerships I've got is with Cardiff University here in Wales in the UK, and they've their part of their team is there's the Centre for Artificial Intelligence, Robotics and Human Machine Systems, which is easy to say, or we call it IROMS. And they've got Neo, and they've got a couple of other robots as well, where they've been engaging with how does human machine teaming work. And in fact, one of the projects that I'm trying to get off the ground at the moment, where we talked about climate ergonomics before, is the use of climate ergonomics in command and control situation with Neo alongside human operators to use as a cobot to ask questions and things like that. So the other things that they've done there is within medical settings as well, so within hospital settings, to be able to take notes and do things like that. So yeah, it's interesting because it's actually quite small. It probably comes up to maybe your waist, maybe a bit more, and so it's actually quite it's a cute humanoid robot.
Is it child size?
Yeah. It's that sort of thing. But when it starts articulating, talking, and stuff like that, I think it's quite easy to slip into that idea that you're having an engagement with it, and it's meaningful. So yeah, it's quite cool.
Well, that's cool. I mean, so just to recap what's going on here, the children had to decide between labels that were offered by the robot and by the human for unfamiliar objects, and the 3-year-olds ended up showing no preference, but the 5-year-olds preferred the robot because it was more competent. When you look at the methodology of these, there's some interesting pieces about this that I want to specifically call out. This wasn't done in a classroom setting. This was done over Zoom. And so you're also taking that into consideration. This wasn't tested in a classroom setting. I can imagine that'd be a future study that they'd want to do. And basically they use sort of a comparative approach looking at the two different groups. And basically the human morphology was controlled by the different shapes of these robots, right? By using Cosmo versus Neo, one truck shaped and one humanoid. That didn't matter. And it's a really unique study in a lot of ways because it's comparing a human speaker versus a robot. And that's not something that we've seen a whole lot, especially when it comes to children. So, for me, there's, I guess, a couple things that I think about. Like one of them I already brought up here was the Zoom meetings, but the other thing is that this is just a reporting on the scientific article. This is not like the actual article. We didn't have access to that. So the sample size, we don't know what it is. We don't know any of the further details, but I think this opens up a great discussion for human factors and what this actually means for education, learning, children's issues, all those topics. Barry, where do you want to start?
So I think I don't know what's interesting about this is, firstly, again, looking at, the study didn't really investigate the quality of output. Yes, we had the human doing some stuff wrong and the robot doing it right, and preference that, but there was no real investigation there into actually which mode the students retained information better from, if that makes any sense. They sort of pushed it out into which did they perceive as being more competent. But actually that's very objective. Very subjective. There's no real objective measure into quality of input. I think there's some bits here, and I've already mentioned it, and I think you mentioned it too. It'd be really neat to go and actually work out, where is the quality in other age groups, and how would different age groups utilize this sort of technology. So not just opening up to being the person at the front delivering that traditional teacher role, but what are them other roles that that could bring something there. And that this was supported by one of the social thoughts that we had from Mark Jones on Facebook, who certainly his thought was certainly older students would be there. Not sure about primary ages though. I'm sure there's probably already been some sort of tests already taken already. I was that's a very cynical approach there, Mark, but possibly not wrong. Nick, where do you want to go next?
Well, I mean, you can think about, you were mentioning, well, what if you did this in addition to a teacher, right? What if you put an aide in the classroom and put the robot as a teacher's aide and basically incorporate a lot of these features that the children find appealing, or the things that work about a robot teaching children? And this is John Putty on Facebook, right? Absolutely, yes. I think in your discussion, and you can credit me for the we are, John. It's important to separate the intellectual element of the robot from the physical embodiment. My 3 and 5-year-old kids already interact with Alexa totally normally. For them, it's not some new tech, but it's just normal. Now, couple Alexa with a large language model, which can learn, and you have an intelligent personal assistant who can learn whether your kid needs this explained in a different way. Actually, actually so much more inclusive as each kid gets the support they need. In terms of physical manifestation, kids can, in some ways, choose what they want, but could be augmented sorry, I'm losing my train of thought here. Could be augmented. There's massive cybersecurity and safeguarding implications, though. Imagine hacking the brains of an entire generation by hacking their AI assistants before they're out of nappies. Yes, that is. We have some more thoughts on cybersecurity later, but yeah, that's a great point, John. And I think there's a lot to chew on there. But yes, you're right. If we raise these children with it just being a normal part of life, and you think about a robot just being in the classroom as an aide. And in fact, I know some teachers have these devices in their classrooms so that way they can ask questions live. Just if a student has something, they can teach them how to use that technology and use the resources that are available to them. And I think you're right. Once you start incorporating those large language models and being able to, as I mentioned earlier, with the artificial intelligence and being able to design specific coursework for a student based on their needs, then I think this becomes insanely powerful, because not only could you do it with, in classroom learning, but you could do it, like I said, with coursework and target questions that are challenging to them, but also give them questions that are just on their level that they could answer and feel confident about. And you get this right mix of confidence, so that way it feels challenging, but also rewarding to do. And if you match that to the student's level, then it's just going to be this perfect, awesome combination. Yes, the cybersecurity issues are there. We can talk about those later. But I think that's a great social thought.
I think it is.
What do you think, Barry?
The point that he raises that, our kids are already using Alexa. Our kids are already using them sort of basically automated, technology-based tools that are in the home. In fact, if you're in our house, they're everywhere. Then, this is really no different. We see a step change, and this is a cultural, digital native, digital immigrant, next gen sort of issue, that we see this as a big step change, that we're going into something cool. The kids of today, the young adults of tomorrow, well, this is what they're growing up with. Their phones they've already got all this information at their fingertips. Having spoken to certainly my kids and some other younger people, they almost don't see the AI is actually a massive thing. The ChatGPT, it is just something you tap a question into and it gives you some answers. It's a better Google. It's not something that it's not necessarily something amazingly clever. It's just what they expect technology to do. So that's interesting. So this is probably it's just going to be expected, isn't it? It's just going to be that thing. So no, John, I thought that was a really, really good interaction there.
Yeah, I think there's some interesting questions around whether or not this will change the way in which children perceive and interact with technology. I don't think that's necessarily true if they grow up with it, like you were mentioning, right? I think there's a lot to be said about growing up with a smart device in your home that you can ask questions, or if they're growing up with a robotic teacher's aide, that's not going to be very different for these children who are growing up in this environment, right? I think there's like I was mentioning earlier, this also highlights sort of the importance when it comes to competency. We have this natural inclination to go towards competency rather than incompetency, and I think that's highlighted by this. Children are not stupid. They are learning how the world works but there's this natural inclination, even from a young age, to go towards the person who knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
And that's comforting to me in a lot of ways. So that's good. And then if you think about sort of the future of education and what this means from that perspective, there's a lot of really interesting points. Do you want to mention this social thought here?
Firstly, before I mention that, I think there's something around the way that we put courses together as well. The idea that we can support students on their individual learning pathway is absolutely key. So if you've got an overall module and you can then tailor by the use of cobots to give the individual support to be able to rephrase things in a way that is particular for that student's individual learning needs, it's really good. And Susie Broadbent made the comment that in the age of cobotics, it's probably actually good practice getting them used for the future world of work. Much as they started to introduce computers back when she was in school, in junior school, it is the future. The key, as with all tech, is to work out which tasks they are better at than humans, and which ones humans are better at. So this goes back to almost what we said at the beginning. Is the robot able to do some of these things that, what is it a teacher does that is just human, that actually a robot probably at this stage couldn't do, though it might be able to in the future, which might also bring in the other social thought that's just come in through LinkedIn.
Yeah, I was just going to bring that up.
It's like we're a follow machine.
Yeah, it's like it exists. So Emily on LinkedIn, some great points raised. How would these robots approach working with learners with learning difficulties? Also, how would they be able to replace the emotional support teaching staff provide? Both very good questions. Let's talk about the learning difficulties first, because I feel like that's the easier of the two. Mentioned it before, the artificial intelligence being responsive to a student's needs. I can imagine in a classroom setting, if you had those with learning difficulties, you might set them in a different classroom setting. There's special education classrooms where they are geared more towards those with learning difficulties. But also there's we need to think about it from the other perspective of advanced education settings too, where you're beyond your peers and you need more stimulation to get you to the next level, to keep you engaged. Otherwise, it's just not going to be great for you. And so I think this is where that adaptive learning, and I guess I could plug the other episode that we did on this, which was, let me find it, 223. We did it on how can AI improve learning. So I think that discussion captures a lot of that question. Now, the second part of this question is how would they be able to replace the emotional support that teaching staff provide? That is something that I struggle with, because if you were to just put a robot in the classroom, then you lose a lot of that. I think we're still a long way out from having emotional relationship. Well, maybe not, because we talked about this too, emotional relationships with AI and robots.
Yeah, let's
but
talk about that.
let's not talk about that one. But I mean, I think we are still a long way out before we all feel that same level of emotional connection to an AI or a robot that we do with humans. I thought there was another social thought on this one too. Barry, what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I think that the first point that she raised around working with learners with learning difficulties, I think we can broaden that out to actually just understanding that different people learn in different ways. And so if you've got the main message that's been delivered, and then each student could potentially have this cobot that could understand what the specific needs are for each student. So somebody might have particularly strong learning difficulties. People might have so people could deaf, blind, so physical issues that they need to deal with. So they might need some sort of conversion, some sort of translation. It can almost be that one-stop hub for supporting all of the student in their particular need in order to be able to get the message across. It might be the case that actually they might need the problem broken down in a different way, or the lesson being learned in a different way, or just broken down into smaller chunks for them to learn, and it could help do that. So I think there's a lot to do with that. But I do think, as you said, that emotional support piece is, firstly, do we want? Could it happen? I think it probably will at some point. But is that something we actually want? Do we want to be able to give AI the same level of emotional connection that we do a human being? That's something that we need to probably dig into at some point. As a society, is do we want to be giving, I don't know, Terminator the same hugs as we do our children? I'm not sold on that yet.
Well, we do have some more social thoughts on this very topic, so I feel right now is a good time to bring them in. So Chris on Twitter says, I find it hard to see a robot taking on the emotional support role teachers provide. I see AI and other similar technologies like calculators. It's an assistive tool. And I don't know. Do you agree with that, Barry?
Yeah, I think definitely that we need to be looking at them. They're part of the toolkit at the moment. I think they, as we sort of come into, they've definitely got a use. There's definitely an opening potential there. But there are definite gaps at the moment. So just to follow that up, so Glennis sends a similar thing in that she highlights that little ones need nurturing to be encouraged to learn, and they are keen to learn if they get a cuddle now and then. If they make a mistake or mess up, then that's fine. Not sure that a robot could provide or replace that human touch. People need people, both large and small. That's quite prophetic.
It is counter argument. Robots could be programmed to simulate that empathy, right? I mean, if you think about, is it true? It may or may not be, probably not if it's a robot doing it, but is it what the human needs in that moment? And does it make sense to do? It could allow those human teachers to focus on providing that personalized attention to the students, while the I guess the human teacher would be doing the warmth, the human emotional piece, and then the robot could be teaching. That could be another piece of it too, right? Where you almost have the human going over and investigating, and how do those roles play together? It's a very interesting question. I just don't know. We don't have enough information.
I mean, Elsa come in with a comment again on Facebook, where we sort of assumed here that that robots wouldn't be able to be as enthusiastic or show the same thing as teachers. But actually, she comes back and says, well, actually, they may be more enthusiastic than some teachers are. That's for sure. Personally, I think robots would benefit older children more so, say, secondary school age. Her children, age 8 and 4, would love the robots, I'm sure, but personally, I don't think they will get the reassurance and encouragement they get from actual teachers. But then again, I've never been told by a robot to do any different, which is actually a really fair point. We've actually been in the in this situation. I mean, how many courses do we go through now that are just recorded web delivered lessons? So your health and safety stuff and your all that sort of stuff is just delivered by basically recorded webinar. We still absorb that information. We do it, we get bored by it. Maybe a robot will be a more exciting way of delivering some of that stuff.
Yeah, I want you to act as the best teacher possible. I mean, like, seriously though, because you're right. The social post is right. I think there's a lot of questions about how we engage students, and can we create the perfect teacher using AI and robotics and put that into every classroom that will react to the students' needs? Like, to me, that's actually really exciting if you think about it from that perspective, is like, how can we get the perfect teacher? The perfect teacher doesn't exist because it's largely dependent on the student-teacher relationship, and there might be a good match somewhere, but everyone's going to have different teaching styles. Everyone's going to have different learning needs. And if you could come up with a teacher that somehow investigates the needs of the classroom and teaches to the center of those needs, to the median, then you're getting at most of those, and then the rest of the I guess issues or difficulties can then be picked up around the edges. And it's like, I don't know. It's just really exciting to me.
But
really exciting.
But then the almost taking that one step further is actually, yes, they could teach the median, but actually they could teach the individual. If they know that student A prefers it in this way, student B prefers it in this way, they could surely adapt the lesson as they go through to be reactive into what happens. It's really interesting. But then are we getting away from, you know, one of my big criticisms, I guess, with the way that we educate now. I've got loads of criticism about the way we educate nowadays, but we educate in large groups. So we educate classes of 30 here in the UK because that's the most cost efficient way of doing it. We have a teacher, and they might have a couple of teaching assistants if they've got a school that could afford them, and we have to teach to the middle of the road. And in fact, there was a study done, or some research done, that showed that out of an entire day's worth of school, so 8 hours of schooling, 6 to 8 hours of schooling, there was about, I think it was an hour and 40 minutes of actual education. Everything else was just looking after children, was childcare. And so if we had this ability to maybe make it a bit more individualistic, would they be more motivated and therefore do what they do? Elsa actually has just come up in the chat and said that actually that the perfect teacher to one person wouldn't be the perfect teacher to another individual. So would it be the same for the robot? And I think you're absolutely right. Unless that robot could almost multiplex between them all, but then you might as well have a one-on-one teaching, and or at least smaller groups. The other bit that we haven't touched upon this, which does kind of, we've sort of edged around, is resourcing. One of the biggest issues we've got here in the UK is getting the teachers in schools, and particularly we've actually got a lack of male teachers. We have more female teachers, very few male teachers, particularly I think in primary education. So actually, would this be a way, trying to put a positive spin on this, would this be a way of solving that teaching crisis? Actually, you have one or two teachers, like human teachers, setting the curriculum, setting the educational standards, setting what the lessons are going to be, and then they have their drones go and deploy them to the young, eager minds of the infants.
Right. I mean, you'd have the other argument, of course, which would be the robots took our teaching jobs away. But you're right. If there's
gaps anyway.
But there's so many available jobs, and there's a need for more education. Like, the more students that you have per teacher, the quality degrades that much more for each of those students. And so the more educators you have, robotic or human, as long as they're the thing that's going to be best for the student, then I think that's a net positive. And of course, you're always going to need a human in the classroom, I think, if anything, to babysit the robot, or to, right?
Yeah.
To babysit the robot, or to be that level of awareness if there is anything environmentally going on that they need to get to safety or something like that. I think you'll always need an adult human in the classroom, but will they need to have the same level of training as educators do now? I don't necessarily think so. If you're introducing a robot that is the ultimate teaching machine in the classroom, right? So there's some of these interesting for and against questions. Yes, it might take away jobs of educators, but you can still have people that are passionate about it without needing to go through all the training. Certification, certainly, because you're dealing with young children, but training, maybe not so much. And that might be a net positive thing, I think.
Yeah, and I think fundamentally it's a bit like AI when we talked about the influence of ChatGPT and said, well, actually, this could almost reform the way we're thinking about what we're doing. This could be a catalyst for us to rethink education, because there's different teaching styles, and certainly it's something we've looked at previously, where we're looking at the school system is what they call is it FMVT, so fixed time. It's fixed time variable mastery. So you spend a certain amount of time in education, and you'll come out with a grading of how much you've learned in that time. What this will allow us to do is to look at actually almost yes, you've still got fixed time, but actually personalize that educational thing. So it allows you to, if they finish things really quickly, maybe cram more stuff in, or do less, or focus on getting the basics right. It should allow us to really shake up education and think about what education is. I will bring in I think it's the last social thought that we've had, because if I don't, Amanda will be upset with me, because she did highlight, where we talked about whether children would still prefer learning if the human was equally competent. She highlights that at primary age, unless robots are helping them climb trees, helping break out the arts and craft supplies, experimenting with the Newton's laws of motion on rope swings, helping them understand how plants grow or tadpoles turn into frogs, what use would there be? But at secondary age, she had teachers who pretty much read from a script and might as well have been a robot. But the good ones are inspiring and spark curiosity. Not sure that's a robot's bag either. Exam revision, maybe. Really good. So again, I think we're identifying roles that they could do, and probably do really well, but actually roles that at the moment we think they would struggle with.
This has been a fantastic discussion so far. We're getting to the point of the show where I might need to move us along, but I think we each open up one more can of worms, and then we move on to the next. Barry, open up your last can of worms.
So I think for me, the last can is it was actually what somebody else raised, Alex raised, is around what happens around the social bit as well. Sorry, the data protection element of this, because if we are if we've got robots in each of these rooms and they are analyzing the children to work out what the best teaching mechanisms are, and being able to deliver that information, where's all the information going, and how is that? I like to live in a light and fluffy world where everybody does everything for a positive reason and there's no malicious actors, but we know that there are loads of malicious actors. So be that actually malicious or just commercial, what is the unintended consequence of this, of having everybody taught in the same, the same stuff, same way, because the curriculum is going to be whatever the curriculum is. You talked right at the top of the show about how how do ethics play into this? Where is the bias? Though there is an argument, actually, we're assuming here the teachers aren't biased. So what is the unintended consequence? I think there is a lot of stuff that it'll be fun to do this, but I think they will also spin off things that we weren't necessarily thinking about, and somebody's going to make a lot of money.
Yeah, somebody will. I think we got to treat that data very similarly to how we treat medical data. The children's learning data, protected, all that stuff. The last can of worms that I would like to open up is, does this use of robotic teaching assistants, teachers, does that create a dependency for the children potentially having access to this technological solution? And does that hinder them from being able to learn in environments without technology? So if you can ask your teacher and it can access the internet and get you a response to anything, and it can deliver that information to you in a way that's completely personalized to you, that then ruin learning for children in other environments where you're basing something off of somebody else's knowledge, and they may know that to be true. And what is truth? That is the last that's the last thing I'll open up. But this excessive reliance on teachers could really force a student to not be able to adapt to these non-technological based learning solutions, or these learning environments, I guess. And the other side of that argument would be, well, you could integrate that approach, I guess, and have both the traditional learning approach, the methods, and the technological methods into a classroom setting, so that way they feel like they could learn in any setting, right? So like if a student were to ask a question to the robot and say, what is the answer to this question? They can say, well, instead of just going straight to Google, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's actually think about that logically, and encourage them to think about things from a logical perspective. And I think that's the right approach. But it's just an interesting question that I think about, is like this reliance on technology. Because when was the last time you went a day without your phone? And for good or for better or for worse, it's a part of our lives now. And is that technology, is learning that technology going to be part of our lives too? I would say yes. There's so many things that we didn't get to. Maybe we'll get to some of it in the post show, but thank you to everyone this week for selecting our topic, especially our patrons. We want to thank our friends over at Concordia University for our news story this week. Special thank you to all of you who commented with HFC Social Thoughts. That's a hashtag to share your thoughts with us. You can always use this hashtag. If we like your comment, we may read it on the show like we did tonight. If you want to follow along, we do post the links to all the original articles and our weekly roundups on our blog. You can also join us in our Discord for more discussion on these stories and other things in there too. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be back to see what's going on in the Human Factors community right after this. Are you tired of boring lectures and textbooks on human factors and UX? Well, grab your headphones and get ready for a wild ride with the Human Factors Minute podcast. Each minute is like a mini crash course packed with valuable insights and information on various organizations, conferences, usability methods, theories, models, certifications, tools, and much more. We'll take you on a journey through the fascinating world of human factors, from the ancient history to the latest trends and developments. Listen in as we explore the field and discover new ways to enhance the user experience. From the Think Aloud protocol to the critical incident technique, focus groups, iterative design, we'll make sure that you're the smartest person in the room. Tune in on the 10th, the 20th, and the last day of every month for a new and interesting tidbit related to human factors. Don't miss out on the Human Factors Minute podcast, your ultimate source for all things human factors.
Human Factors Cast brings you the best in human factors news, interviews, conference coverage, and overall fun conversations into each and every episode we produce. But we can't do it without you. The Human Factors Cast network is 100% listener supported. All the funds that go into running the show come from our listeners. Our patrons are our priority, and we want to ensure we're giving back to you for supporting us. Pledges start at just $1 per month and include rewards like access to our monthly Q&As with the hosts, personalized professional reviews, and access to the full library of Human Factors Minute, a weekly podcast where the hosts break down unique, obscure, and interesting human factors topics in just 1 minute. Patreon rewards are always evolving, so stop by patreon.com/humanfactorscast to see what support level may be right for you. Thank you, and remember, it depends.
Yes, huge thank you, as always, to our patrons. We especially want to thank our Human Factors Cast all-access patron, Michelle Tripp. Patrons like you truly keep this show running, on, operational. We keep going because of you. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about all access. What does that mean? Well, welcome to the Human Factors. That's the dumb commercial read. Welcome to the Human Factors Cast live show. Today we'll be talking about our Human Factors Cast all access and Human Factors Cast VIP part for just $20 a month. You could become, look, okay, I'm going to go off script here. $1 gets you in the door. Let me just be clear. $1 gets you in the door, really helps the show. But for $20 a month, you can become part of our exclusive community, get recognized on our show with a shout out every week. That's right. We'll be shouting out your name loud and clear every single week. Plus, you'll get access to all of our premium learning resources through Human Factors Cast Academy. We're talking ebooks, webinars, courses, all of which currently in development. But now, if you're looking for something even more exclusive, now there's our Human Factors Cast VIP tier, and that's for you. For $50 a month, you'll be able to get to choose any topic you want, host your own roundtable discussion with yours truly, myself and Barry Kirby. We will sit there and we will talk about whatever you want, Human Factors Cast related, not Human Factors Cast related. It's your own hour-long podcast that we will sit there and do for you. So, yeah, you heard that right. You can host a show with us. So become part of the Human Factors Cast community, get access to all the exclusive content benefits that we have to offer. Just remember, these tiers are for people who like to be recognized and appreciated, but also who have an extra $20 or $50 lying around each month. So there's that. All right, let's switch gears and get to the next part of the show.
It came from...
Camera's bouncing around everywhere. All right. Yes, let's switch gears, get to this. It came from, this is where we search all over the internet to bring you topics the community is talking about. If you find any of these answers useful, give us a like wherever you're watching or listening to help other people find these questions and answers. We got a couple tonight that really, well, you'll see. All right. This first one here is from Responsible Fruit 1 on the UX Research subreddit. As a UX researcher, I get asked for feedback by product managers, but some stakeholders ignore my suggestions. How can I handle this situation without conceding and having problems? Fall back on UX research. Barry, what do you think?
Well, stakeholders will hold stakes. I mean, for me, this is part of the job. So you can do your technical stuff, you can do the research, you can have some amazing insights, but just going, you've got to go and prove what it is that you're doing is good stuff and it'll add value. Just going in and saying, "Oh, please, I've got this insight. It might help," isn't going to cut it. We are a rare breed. There's not that many of us around, and actually, sometimes it can be quite easy to railroad what we say. So sometimes you've got to go and be loud and proud about it. If just being loud isn't enough, go and be a pain. Go and get in somebody's face, but in a nice way, obviously. I'm not advocating well, I might sometimes maybe, but no, do it in a nice, helpful way. But go and show value. Show that actually what you're talking about, you're not just being loud for the sake of it, but you actually can change the product for the better. If all else fails, and your advice wasn't taken, and you can then prove that because your advice wasn't taken, it wasn't very successful. Learn the art of saying "I told you so" without actually saying "I told you so." It doesn't actually help in the grand scheme of things, but it does make you feel that little bit better afterwards. Nick, what do you think? How would you solve it?
Are you saying that you would rather hold the stake?
Maybe.
I put in my thoughts here. This question again, really, who picks these? I do. I pick them. But look, here's the thing. I'm gonna keep beating this. I'm gonna keep beating this drum. You get them involved. You get them as part of the process. You get them to understand your perspective, etc., etc. I'm tired of answering this question. It keeps coming up. If that doesn't work for you, quit. Stop doing work. Just get paid for sitting there. I don't care. I don't. Just, is that bad advice? I don't know.
Fair, I don't think it is, because actually, if all you can do is your best, right? And if you can say you've diligently done your research, you come with your recommendations, conclusions, whatever it is, you've passed them on to the right people, and you give them with the right amount of effort, then it's not your fault. You've done the best that you can possibly do. Yeah, get paid, people.
There's the other side of the coin of like, just do the bare minimum of work that you need to not get fired, because then you're still getting paid for the same amount of work that you would have done if you were overperforming and overachieving. And like, if you are at this point where all these people who have asked this question before, and this person too, if you've tried your best, if you've literally done your due diligence, then why would you put in an ounce of effort beyond what the minimum of is required of you if you know this is not going to change a culture? Like, it's just a larger question. Personal
pride.
Yeah, there's that. All right, let's get into this next one here. Zoom lost my recording. Any ideas? This is by Laro Stars on the UX Research subreddit. Hey there. I lost a recording from a Zoom interview that I really need. Zoom says they can't see it, but it's not. Zoom says they can see it, but it's not accessible to me. Any ideas on how I can recover it? Has anyone experienced this before, Barry? I want to focus on the losing participant research data part of this, not the Zoom technical piece.
Okay, so in the bit that doesn't help this person whatsoever, but backups on your backups, it does happen. It absolutely does happen. I mean, how many times have you, Nick, helped me out of a hole with my 1202 recordings? If nothing else. But I've been there where you've had a recording, or you've even think you've had a written down notebook and you can't find the notebook. It happens. But I now have the mantra of, if I'm doing something, I have 2 recording devices and notes. I might not make the notes, but somebody will be delegated to make notes of the main things. So that's basically that's my whole backup on your backup type approach. You have to take 2 recordings, and actually things like dictaphones or whatever, if you're doing physical interviews, or if you're doing Zoom, try and have a local device hanging off it as well. or because whatever platform you're using, to actually get an audio output now isn't too difficult. It used to be quite hard, whereas now almost any Bluetooth device would do it. Just do a double backup. However, if you've lost all that, you can't do it, and you're in the situation where you've lost that piece, I would do effectively a cognitive walkthrough. Replay that whole interview the way that you did it, and step yourself through, almost try and relive the experience, and then try and narrate it to yourself. So do a recording with a dictaphone or some sort of device, and just walk yourself through what happened through that interview to try and recreate your stuff. If you took no notes at all, nothing else, then walk it through. If you've got your notes that you took and they're just doodles, actually the doodles have a way of helping you remember what happened. So as you do this, do a walkthrough with looking at the notes and try and remember what you're doing in order to create the doodle or whatever it is that you're doing. That will help you recreate it, and then learn for next time. Nick, how would you do it? What would you play with?
Losing data sucks. It's happened to me before. It's happened to a lot of us. This specific question sounds more like a technical limitation with Zoom, and I think your double backup of everything is a little excessive. Personally, I used to double backup this show and do local recordings and have everybody do local recordings, and that was way too much every week. So now we just wing it, and if it messes up on us, then it messes up on us, and that's it. But really, what we're looking at here is having control over the situation, and I think that's really what's key here. So you have relied on a recording from Zoom. Maybe use technology that's local to your computer that you can record it with, right? As I say here, recording on a third-party source. So there's that, but there's also, you have control over how you record, and cloud recordings are bad for many reasons. I don't like them. If they're your only option, fine. But you have control over that. If you lose control over things, then it's not going to be great. There's other ways that you can back this thing up too. Now there's great AI tools that will summarize your entire meeting, like paragraph by paragraph, which are great. And you can implement those in your workflow process. So if you don't have the recording, you at least have the AI notes. And then what's even better than AI notes is a human sitting there right by your side as a dedicated note taker, that if the event that the interview does become a corrupted file, or you can't get access to the recording, you at least have that dedicated note taker's notes. And that's what you're looking at in terms of options. I don't know. Zoom sucks. Sorry. I don't like. Yeah, those are fighting words. But all right, let's get into this last one here. Antagonistic CX relationship. That's customer experience for any of you that are unfamiliar. This is by Akawananawaisnays. That's a long name. It's a long week. On the UX research subreddit, they write, as a member of the UX research team, I find our relationship with the customer experience team to be toxic. How can I improve this situation? What are some tips to deal with the customer experience team's negative attitude and manipulative behavior towards UX research? Has anyone been in a similar situation, and how did you deal with it?
You mentioned it was a CX team, but can we stop making up crappy team names? Experience begins with an E. There's an E right at the front of it. CET. Oh, anyway. Fundamentally, well, get the same. No, we've done this one on a number of occasions. Get the human factors flag. Make a flag. Put human factors all over it. On ergonomics or UX in your case. Fly it, or the flag comes with a pole. Do what you want with that. But no, the serious answer, it's a relationship. It's a relationship like you have with a client, like you have with superiors, like you have with other teams. You got to work at them. And yeah, you can have some really bad relationships here. But just saying that they're negative, great. That gives you a challenge. But you've got to work at it. I've biscuits, cake, wine can work well, but maybe some sort of joint team outing, go to the pub or an escape room or some sort of challenging thing to go play golf. I've never really played golf. I think I played golf once. And I did that because I couldn't get hold of the people I wanted to in another way. And I did that as a work thing. But but yeah, it takes effort, people. Doesn't just happen. Nick, well, how would you solve this in a slightly less frivolous way than what I have?
You know, I think this is probably one of the best pieces of advice that I've ever given. Battle Royale.
Okay.
All right. Well, now it's time for one more thing. No. Look, it's exactly what I said in the first one. This question again, like you, Barry, you've said it multiple times on the show before. We're the glue that holds everything together in a lot of ways. And they are an internal stakeholder. You need to play nice with them. And if they're being toxic to you, then understand why. And I think a lot of your advice, Barry, is sound. I think that's the way to go. You got to build a relationship with them in the same way that you build rapport with your users, and you need to do it. It's just a part of the job. And dealing with terrible people can be, not always, fortunately I'm not, but it can be a part of the job. Not now anyway, in the past. But like I'm going to give the same advice as my first question there, you know? If quit, stop doing work. Just get paid for doing the littlest amount. I don't know. I don't care. Just Battle Royale. That's the way. All right, let's get into one more thing. Barry, what's your one more thing this week?
So we've just been through two national holidays. So we had Bank Holiday Friday and we had Bank Holiday Monday off for Easter. So a good 4-day weekend. However, everybody in my house was ill except me. So wife were ill, kids were ill. And it was a really weird experience because I didn't want to hang around in the house too much because I didn't want to catch the lurgy that's going around. But I also couldn't get stuck into any sort of jobs or anything because if there were any sort of DIY sort of maybe doing, I thought about getting the chainsaw out and doing some things like that. And I was like, well, actually, if I have an accident, then I've got no backup, no real support. Couldn't really go out anywhere very much or anything like that. And so I spent certainly a good couple of the days wandering around slightly aimlessly, literally because I didn't want to do any work. I actually made a conscious effort to not do any work. I normally would just go and probably pick up a couple of tasks, a conscious effort to take a break. But the weather was quite nice, so I wanted to be outside. And so I was wandering up and down. Yeah, it was just a really weird experience of just not being able to do stuff because I didn't want to be too far away. So I ended up not doing very much and just felt very aimless. But I don't think that was necessarily a bad thing. What about you, Nick? What's your one more thing?
I just imagine that meme of the guy just standing around waiting, you know.
Yeah.
With that your face plastered all over it.
Yeah. That was pretty much.
Oh, man. Okay, y'all ready for a Love is Blind update? Oh, this show, man! This show is insane! Holy moly. Okay, I've been mentioning this every week. And just when you think it couldn't get crazier, it gets crazier. They drop new episodes every Friday. This upcoming Friday is the last episode. Like, this is the most insane season that they've ever had. And, like, I can't even get into some of the spoilers because I know some people, I mean, it's been out a week and some people are waiting to binge the whole thing. But let me just say the twists and turns of this season are insane. There are people who are like, I don't know, this is not, geez, how do I say this without spoiling it? There are people who are like making really poor decisions on camera that like, they know they're on camera and they're like, I don't know, supposedly committed to people. And it's just, it's dumb. It's really dumb and just fun to watch. So there's your Love is Blind update.
So if I watch it, because I've never watched any of them, do I need to go and watch a previous series first, or should I just go straight into this one?
Just go straight into season 5, man. Like, you are good to go. The only thing that you need to know about this show, the premise is that there are a group of men and a group of women, and they date each other without seeing each other. They get into these, what they call pods. Okay.
Right.
And then at the end of, I think it's like 2 weeks or something, they spend all day dating each other and talking to each other and falling in love with each other. And once they found their match, somebody proposes and then they say, okay, yes, I'd like to marry you without ever seeing you. And then they go off and then they get integrated into their real lives together. So work and school and finances and family and friends and all of it. And it's just insane to see. And then they decide at the end of it whether or not they want to get married or not. And
right.
This season is really good. And this weekend they're doing a live reunion, which is something completely new. So anything can happen. It's live. It's like these shows. You know, we're recording this live. Anything could happen. Anything like me ending the episode. So that's it for the day, everyone. If you like this episode and enjoy some of the discussion about AI, robotics, teaching, I'll encourage you all to go listen to episode 223, How Can Artificial Intelligence Improve Learning? That was a great conversation. Comment wherever you're listening with what you think of the news story this week. For more in-depth discussion, you can always join us on our Discord community, visit our official website, sign up for our newsletter, stay up to date with all the latest Human Factors news. If you like what you hear, you want to support the show, there's a couple things you can do. One, right now, wherever you're at, you can stop what you're doing, leave us a 5-star review. That's free. You can do that without giving us any money. I love that. 2, you can also do this without giving us any money. Tell your friends about the show. That really helps us grow, and I can't tell you how many people have found the show because of somebody else telling them, you'd like this. If you do have money and want to support us that way, just $1 gets you in the door with Patreon. It's a wonderful community of folks in our Patreon. You get access to a million different things. We have so much stuff, and we're always trying to give back to our patrons because they truly support the show. And with that, I want to thank Mr. Barry Kirby for being on the show today. Where can our listeners go and find you if they want to talk about learning about robots?
That was very boring for you, I have to say.
Okay. Let me try again. Where can our listeners go and find you if they want to talk about your experience with Neo?
Okay, that's slightly better. Okay, if you want to come and get in touch with me and come talk on my socials, then find me on Twitter, @Baz_K, but other socials as well. Just search for Barry Kirby. But if you want to come and listen to me interview amazing people from the Human Factors community and adjacent to the Human Factors community, then come and listen to me on 1202, the Human Factors podcast, which is at 1202podcast.com.
As for me, I've been your host, Nick Roome. If you want to talk trash television and Love is Blind finale, you can find me on our Discord and across social media at Nick_Roome. Thanks again for tuning into Human Factors Cast. Until next time,
it depends.
That was a good show.
Dude, we're nearly 10 minutes over.
No, we're only 6. And I'm starting to account for that because all the ums and ers.
Oh, that's so we've got sort of 6-minute leeway. That's fair. Yeah, I did have a whole session where I'd sort of bit there where I was like, I know what I want to say and I just can't get the words out, and I'm just going it's fine. That was good fun. I enjoyed that.
I'll hear it.
But,
yeah, that was great. There were so many things that we didn't get to. I'm glad we got to all the social thoughts, but there's like a ton of like controversial topics that we could potentially dig into in the post show here.
Authority. I want to talk about authority.
Ooh, the authority figures?
Yeah, because you raised it at the top of the discussion. I thought it was really interesting because we do. Actually, it's also another downfall of the educational system. You can tell I go on rants about the educational system. The fact that we look at teachers as an authority figure, and the fact we automatically then assume that older people and authority figures know everything. Because we assume that because they're the ones giving us the facts, they're the factors, they're the gatekeepers, and so there's 2 problems with this. So if we then have robots up there as the gatekeepers, well, you're just on that first step to Skynet, aren't you? Or what's the or the Matrix? So whether Terminator or the Matrix is your thing. So. You know, we're in that bit where the potential robots hold the power, but then the flip side of that is true that actually, and it falls into our home education experience is we try and learn alongside our children. So we teach them how to learn, not that we hold all the answers. That we actually try and do it in a way that they're the ones that go and find the answers, and we empower them to do that. We enable them to do that because we tend to use an approach. Basically autonomous or semi-autonomous learning, where whatever it is that motivates them and encourages them to be into whatever it is they're doing. It could be anything from Henry VIII all the way through to archery or whatever in between. We then use that as then a springboard to learning the topic. So how do you get your writing and your maths and all that sort of stuff into that topic? But it's using their motivation. It's almost using their motivation against them.
Turn it into work, and then they hate it.
Yeah. Well, no, but that's kind of the point. Is one of my big issues with school, or the schooling enterprise as it is now, is everybody hates going to school. You know, you're like, to young kids, what you do? Oh, I'm going to go to school now, and I'm going to spend the day at school. Then home. Oh, I'm home from school. Yes, I'm free. Well, actually, if you make it so it's actually all enjoyable and it is all just part of life's learning, then you actually enjoy learning. I don't care about what you learn, it's the art of learning that is absolutely key. So that was a long diversion of authority. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see whether what does this mean for authority figures and how we see robots in authority.
Yeah, I mean, you could make the argument that trusting robots, machines, more than humans could set a really dangerous precedent for when the singularity happens. Leading these children to sort of mistrust humans or mistrust human authority figures in the future, right? And that could just spell a host of bad news.
Well, to be fair, there is a cultural issue there, because actually you could argue that we trust human authority figures too much already.
Oh yeah, no, for sure.
You know, I mean, we've got issues with some of the police forces here in the UK. You've got presidential issues.
We have police issues too.
And you got you know, there's all sorts of bits there that we have authority, and we automatically assume that authority is good, that the authority figure is good, and they've got your interests at heart. And actually, it's quite challenging in today, in particularly in the current environment. And maybe it's just because we're hearing more about them that actually, you know, how we trust. I mean, maybe in this instance, machines are more trustable than humans are. Who knows? Throw that out there for
well, I mean, here's the other piece of that equation, right? If you have both human and robot teachers in the classroom, and you have them you teach them against competency and credibility of these various authority figures and against sources of information, misinformation, all that stuff, then you can argue that they might have more critical thinking skills when it comes to, what is that, Barry? We've been doing podcasting for how many years? And what is that?
I know, I forgot to switch it off. That was my outlook.
But
it means, I mean, send me an email.
But you think about from that perspective, that if you have that mixed perspective of both a human and a robot teaching side by side, could potentially lead to better critical thinking skills, which I think is the other piece of that equation.
Would being able to have the robot there, so with a human at the front of the classroom, if you were to do the critical thinking, critical evaluation piece, it means that you could then go and say, well, how does this application of AI apply to something really off-world, like how I make donuts? I don't make donuts. I don't know where that came from. Maybe a fancy donut. But if you do that, a teacher will be like, well, actually, and they would have that ability to flex and pivot, because it's that dynamic thing. But also maybe see where, if you're going to a certain subject, that it could be making some of the students feel uncomfortable. And actually then be able, it's a bit like when you're giving a presentation, isn't it? That you're giving a presentation, you read the room and you flex what you're doing on the fly because you're getting certain cues from that audience. How would the robot be able to read the room? Would it be able to read the room, or does it just splurge out its stuff and then, you know, 40 minutes later, everyone packs up and goes home?
Well, great question, because we actually remember, Barry, we talked about this on the AI episode, where if you had that continuous feedback mechanism of like an understanding check that was completely anonymous, right, for each of the students, and you know, it's like a checkpoint. Do you understand this? Yes or no? Or, you know, a quick quiz, so that way, you know, every 10 minutes or so, to understand if students are getting this concept, and if that robot then needs to reiterate those topics again. Like, that was actually a really good discussion and a really good episode. It was you, me, and Frank on that episode. And I think that was a great one to go back and listen to in conjunction with this one here. So
that does bring up an interesting concept then, because of this approach. Actually, we rely on examination, testing, things to assume that to regurgitate knowledge, which actually it just means that, are you good at exams or not? Could the use of an AI robot here actually be able to read cues in such a way of knowing, or be able to
nonverbal cues. Yeah.
Yeah, be able to assess whether they're taking on that information and understand it in a way that isn't testing. Because actually, so many people, I mean, we've got discussions with my kids and wider that actually just being able to sit down and just ream answers out for an exam. Well, that just means you can answer an exam. Well done. But how applicable is that to the world of work? How applicable is that to life? But actually, if the AI could read the social cues and your responses, and be able to quiz you, discuss with you what it is, and be able to actually have the ability to turn around and say, actually, yes, they get it, they understand it, they don't just they're not just regurgitating, they know how to apply it. Then actually, that gives you more value. That gives you a better outcome.
Dude, this is where I get really jazzed, because you think about you think about the nonverbal cues and the AI machine algorithms going on that would read the nonverbal cues and determine whether or not a student is uncomfortable with continuing on with a topic, and they can then sort of consolidate that data and analyze it and determine where the class needs to be at that point. But then also you can have that robot, that AI system, like go to specific children that are either having issues, or you interject with like let's say somebody's uncomfortable speaking publicly in the class. You can address that by not having them do that and really address the student's needs. Or if someone notices a student that's becoming less engaged, those nonverbal cues, then the robot could be prompted to ask them a question. Can you give me an example of this? That's just it's engaged, it's targeted towards them. This gets me really jazzed for the future of education. Like, this is really cool stuff.
Yeah, but then that also leads it for me, as I guess I keep on ranting about it gives us an opportunity to change education as well, because I think the need for us to be in massive classes of 30 and more is purely financial constraint. That is it.
Yeah.
That is the only reason we do that. But working in small clusters, and actually them clusters don't have to be rigidly formed, because if you've got enough robots to be able to do stuff and to deliver stuff to the same standard all the way through, you can actually dynamically create courses for people. You can actually create the content that they need and be much more flexible about the delivery, and allow people to do what they want to do, as opposed to saying, right, you will go to school from 9 to 5, you will go and attend these lectures, sorry, you can't go and attend these lectures because you've got another one, we don't have enough teachers for it. Oh, by the way, we can't, there's no lectures today because the teachers are on strike, sorry, we haven't been able to recruit. All these fundamental issues actually we can solve. But then one of the other issues that you brought up, that were in the notes, is the wealth aspect. So obviously you have here in the, I assume you went out in the States as well, but the idea that private schools and public schools, so the private schools have their very nice gold-plated robots with super storage of intelligence, and super hyper connected, as opposed to the second-hand knockoff one made out of plasticine that goes to the public schools.
Right.
So, and then also, do the super rich parents have one at home that's also linked into the school and therefore can do extra stuff there, and everything is all nicely tied together? I think that there are ways around. So using an open architecture approach, you can get around a lot of that in the same way of, when they were talking about Ready Player One, for example, and having different types and different grades of input, but actually everybody had access to the basic element that ensured a minimum quality of service.
Right.
And yes, you might have a more enhanced one than that, but hey, big deal.
Yeah, like different like I can see schools almost developing proprietary modules or something. Yeah. Well, I mean, like here's the other side of that argument, right? There's if you have, a lot of this comes down to government and funding, but presumably it'd be cheaper to run a robot. Maybe not the upfront costs, but you get a big bill passed that gets a bunch of robots in these classes. Okay, let's just say we're over that hurdle, because that's going to be a huge fight in itself. But you have all these robots in the classes, and what does that do long term? Well, I think that could actually close that gap in a lot of ways, because education is one of the biggest reasons for those disparities, at least in some ways. In some way, without getting too in the weeds here, but it could potentially close that gap.
But there's also another flexing this slightly. If we get introduced and learn how to work with cobots at such an early age, does the educational burden need to be so big when you're younger? Because if you learn how to use a cobot properly and how to engage with it, and the program is there, well, couldn't you then, when you learn the essentials, how to use that, how to engage with society, how to read, write, do the basics, how to engage with systems, but actually, do you need to learn all the history stuff? Do you need to learn all the geography stuff? Could be the fact that actually maybe a few years later, I am going to Spain, right? So now we'll download, using my cobot system, teach me about Spain. I want to learn Spanish. I want to learn about the foods and the wines and all that sort of stuff. But you'll do that ad hoc. You'll do that when you need it. You want to become a software programmer, right? Teach me how to. I now want to do it that way. So you're looking at rather just this, which when you think about it is a bit odd. A couple of years at the beginning of your life, you do all your learning, and then you stop learning. You then work, which actually we're learning all the time anyway. So actually, why don't we lower the burden then? Because you learn through life what you need when you need it. It's almost like the Matrix when they teach you kung fu.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like here's another thing, right? So you have those like self-directed interests that it could teach you about, and that's awesome. But then what if like there's all these things that are so unaccounted for when you think about teachers, and how they could bring something up on the fly about a trip that they took that exposes these students to a different culture, a different way of life. Teachers have different backgrounds, the way they were raised, and they bring some of that flavor to the classroom when they teach.
Yep.
And they all have different styles, and so I'm wondering if programmed correctly, a robot could just off the cuff make some interesting remarks, and then a student could inquire further about those, like, I don't know, let's say you're learning about I don't know, like let's say you're learning about cooking or something, and then a robot off the cuff mentions, and in Spain they don't eat dinner until 10 p.m. And then that's when you can be like, oh wait, why don't they do that? And then you go, oh well, it's part of their culture. And then like,
yep,
did you also know that they take breaks in the middle of the day? And like that could be a really cool piece of it, where it could just interject these like connections from various different, because I think learning about culture is one of those things that would be, or could be, I guess, really overlooked when it comes to this education, because teachers and people come from various different backgrounds and upbringings and cultures, and that is so crucial for understanding how we all fit in the place of the world.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I do fear about with this is standardized curriculums, and more, even worse, approved curriculums. Where we all, again, going back to that idea that yes, we'd all be great and we'd all do the right things, but as soon as you start turning around and saying, right, well, we shall not teach about abortion, we shall not teach about sex, we shall not teach about trans issues, we shall not teach about state mandated things like that, and then you start going, right, we shall not teach about different religions, we shall not teach about science because we don't believe in science. And
okay, Florida, calm down.
Yeah, sorry. There's all these sort of issues that are interesting, but to flex that to a different way, yes, the robots might not be able to come up with cool little interjections of what they've done, But one of the biggest issues that when you're having somebody going into a classroom is can't get the projector working, can't get the computer working, right?
Yeah.
Technically, a robot should not have any of them issues. But how cool would it be to say, right, today we're learning about Egypt. Put on your VR goggles, everybody, and I'm going to take you on a journey to Egypt. And because it does the virtual tour, but it does it in such a well choreographed way that we as humans just couldn't do, because we'd be too busy going, okay, is everybody got their glasses on? Oh, I haven't got my glasses on. Oh, hold on, I'm just going to reboot my system. We'll be with you in 5 minutes. Oh, the network is, the computer would hopefully, or the robot would hopefully have that linked up and working and be ace.
Yes, it would. And here's the beautiful part about that. Everyone has their own thing in front of their face. Everyone has their own headphones on, blocking them out from all of their cohort. And so that AI, that robot, could then personalize the experience to each one of those children, and they can learn at their own pace the things that they need to learn, incorporate concepts that are difficult for them to learn in that lesson. Like, that is where the magic could truly happen, because then it's personalized. And then everyone goes in with the assumption that they know that they're going to get their own personalized experience. And then you facilitate a social piece where everyone talks about the things that they learned in their own environment. Oh, did you see this? No, I was at the pyramids. No, I was at the Nile. Wow, that's cool. Tell me about that. And then they learn from each other too. And that could be a part of the classroom setting. Oh man, I'm getting so excited. Oh, that's so cool.
It'd be cool, wouldn't it? I think there's obviously, yes, there's boundaries, there's issues, there's all that sort of stuff, but it's going to happen. It is absolutely going to happen. Just in the same way we're going to see AI become pervasive in medical, in teaching, in so many other different trades. It's more about how we do it, and we do it with our eyes open. I sat on a AI in digital health special interest group this week. And again, because the last one I sat on, the article that I wrote around Chat GPT was the main focus, and this time there's been a study done on Chat GPT about whether it could diagnose as well as a human could based on the same facts. And so it was a paper on an experiment, and he came out and said no, Chat GPT wasn't very good, but it was all right at these other things. And he was like, well, okay. And I sort of ripped into the experimental procedure a little bit, but that's led on to I'm about to review an article for a medical journal on ChatGPT, which is going to be quite good fun. But yeah, so the whole point of that is that we are starting to see AI being experimentally used in all these areas anyway. It's going to happen. People are just too curious. I've spent most of today looking about how to integrate ChatGPT into Power Automate. To see if I can do some stuff easier and actually give myself another team member without having to employ another team member. And it's exciting. It's people like us who will sit there and play and almost articulate, actually, I've got this problem. Could this work? Could it do this? Actually, what happens if I just push that a little bit further? Would it allow me to do this? What somebody else did? Oh, I could innovate off what they've done and flex it to what I'm doing. Just by changing nuances behind it or some variables or something like that. We are inquisitive people, and it's out the box already. So it's a matter of time. We could just have a countdown timer. I don't know how long that countdown timer would need to be.
Yeah, it's I got so jazzed about today's topic. Like I don't.
It's been a while since we've spoken solidly. So this has nearly been an hour and a half now.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to mention, like, we're almost at time. And I feel like that post show didn't even happen because we were so focused on this topic. I do just want to mention that if any of you want to continue this conversation, please join our Discord. Reach out, say, hey, really enjoyed the conversation on robotics and teaching, and we'll comment on there. We'd love to have more of a conversation about this. This is awesome. Let's just preview some of the stories for next week. Again, you can go vote on this now. I posted the link in chat earlier, but I will post it again for you all. and everyone can have a say in the topics that we cover on the show. Would love to have your input. So the stories for next week could be, God, it's all tied. The takeaways from Stanford's 386-page report on the state of AI and what that means for human factors. Once more with feeling, exploring relatable robotics at Disney. So if you like the robot story, you want to hear more of that, there you go. And then,
that wouldn't be terrible.
What's that?
That wouldn't be terrible.
No, we could continue this robotics discussion. And then technology for people living with quadriplegia. So go vote on those stories. And you have until Monday to do so. And then we'll ask you for your social thoughts again. Again, you can always leave us a comment with the hashtag HFC Social Thoughts, all one word. We'll see it. We have some automation to pick up on that. And we'll potentially read your comment on the show. So I think that's going to do it for us today. Some really fantastic discussion. Again, thank you to everyone who wrote in with the social thoughts and commented on the live chat. This was such a fantastic discussion. Barry, anything else you want to say before we sign off?
No, I'm going to go find some painkillers.
Yeah, how's your back doing?
Really so.
Okay. All right, Barry's going to go find some painkillers. I'm going to go and do some post on this show. And then the post on the post show, post-production.
There we go. Yes.
And we'll see you right here next week. Same time, same place. All right. Until then, bye, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Are you tired of boring lectures and textbooks on human factors and UX? Well, grab your headphones and get ready for a wild ride with the Human Factors Minute podcast. Each minute is like a mini crash course packed with valuable insights and information on various organizations, conferences, usability methods, theories, models, certifications, tools, and much more. We'll take you on a journey through the fascinating world of human factors, from the ancient history to the latest trends and developments. Listen in as we explore the field and discover new ways to enhance the user experience. From the Think Aloud protocol to the critical incident technique, focus groups, iterative design, we'll make sure that you're the smartest person in the room. Tune in on the 10th, the 20th, and the last day of every month for a new and interesting tidbit related to human factors. Don't miss out on the Human Factors Minute podcast, your ultimate source for all things human factors.
Human Factors Cast brings you the best in human factors news, interviews, conference coverage, and overall fun conversations into each and every episode we produce. But we can't do it without you. The Human Factors Cast network is 100% listener supported. All the funds that go into running the show come from our listeners. Our patrons are our priority, and we want to ensure we're giving back to you for supporting us. Pledges start at just $1 per month and include rewards like access to our monthly Q&As with the hosts, personalized professional reviews, and access to the full library of Human Factors Minute, a weekly podcast where the hosts break down unique, obscure, and interesting human factors topics in just 1 minute. Patreon rewards are always evolving, so stop by patreon.com/humanfactorscast to see what support level may be right for you. Thank you,